Hey Summoners, and welcome back to another episode of Underrated Picks here at ProGuides. This episode is going to cover those picks that most players don't realize are hard carrying games on patch 9.23. Whether they are sleeper OP or just not gaining the recognition that they deserve, we are here to keep you guys updated in this series. Make sure to leave any feedback or suggestions that you have down below in the comments. And also for our question of the day, what are your guys' thoughts so far on the item changes? Personally, I haven't found much of an issue at all, except for the fact that I think Sanguine Blade is just a little bit problematic. It's the preseason, guys, so I hope you're out there grinding and trying to improve. Make sure you head over to ProGuides.com because we have partnered up with pro players to design courses that'll help you out on that grind. We also have a ton of coaches that are readily available, so don't miss out on this opportunity. Now, with that being said, let's get this video started. First up, in the top lane is Aatrox. Our analysts believe that he's going to make a comeback very soon. With the changes to Conqueror, Aatrox is now a strong candidate as he benefits heavily from the extra damage and sustain that it provides. Since he's always pretty much building Black Cleaver, the loss of true damage won't hurt him as significantly as other champions. Aatrox's win rate has slowly been on the rise once again following the major dip after his big nerfs in patch 9.18. It honestly looks promising, and as the top lane terror is set to make his comeback very soon, veteran players begin to recognize his strength and start hopping back on the Aatrox hype train. Overall, he's just a great champion all around as he is relatively safe and he can be a dominant pick during the early to mid game. Most players do like to generalize these types of champions as having a weak late game, but it's honestly not that Aatrox is weaker, he just becomes harder to play. His damage output is still insanely high as he soaks up even more damage than before with his ultimate and Conqueror's synergy. While picking him blind isn't advisable, it's not the worst, so he's in an okay spot to start playing again if you've put your time into him. A much more low-key top lane pick is Olaf. While he did see a lot of play earlier on in early seasons as a top laner, he's been resigned to the jungle in the last couple of years. However, more attack damage and extra sustain from the Conqueror are excellent for Olaf because of his innate attack speed buffs and his Q. Since his Q has such a short cooldown, and because Olaf attacks so quickly, extra AD is ridiculously powerful for him. Olaf is one of the strongest early game laners in the game. His nearly non-existent cooldown on his Q, his high attack speed, sustain, and true damage make him a terror to scrap with. He's always looking to all in after landing a single axe, and then the 100% bonus AD ratio on that ability really speaks for itself. Olaf's high attack speed means it's very easy for him to immediately max out his Conqueror and start stacking. If you're looking to play somebody who is hyper aggressive and in your face, you will want to pick up Olaf. He's in a really good place right now and held around a 50% win rate last patch, meaning at his worst, he's okay. But the changes to Conqueror heavily benefit him as he already does have true damage built into his kit, so he definitely got the better end of the Conqueror trade. Although in the late game he will fall off, his ability to crush the early and mid game and secure early objectives like Rift Herald and the Dragons make him even more valuable than before. One more time, here are those builds for top lane. Okay, let's jump into the jungle. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I have this bug where my screen turns dark and then it turns gray. Well, okay, it's not really a bug. I sure wish it was because, I gotta be honest, I don't like playing against Nocturne. In spite of the changes to Presence of Mind, Nocturne is still a potent threat at the moment. The addition of Sanguine Blade and the buff to Duskblade have really led to an increase in Nocturne's power level. He was already annoying enough, but now he has even more damage when he catches you out in a side lane. The changes overall to the jungle have been more beneficial for Nocturne as well, as he's completely fine chilling and power farming early on in the game. He has a very fast clear speed as well, so he's able to hold his pace as one of the best farming junglers in the game. It's only a matter of time before you hear that first paranoia activate in the game, and you know one of your teammates are about to die. Sanguine Blade is also the biggest reason that Nocturne has earned a spot here. Whenever he sees an enemy out of position by themselves, he can ult onto them and the bonus stats from it almost guarantees a 1v1 victory for Nocturne. In terms of the jungle items, you can either take Warrior or Bloodrazor, but one of our analysts still prefers to take Warrior for the extra cooldown reduction since Presence of Mind no longer restores that ultimate cooldown. There is another farm to level 6 jungler that is worth mentioning, which is Amumu. His ganks are decent too, but the more farm-oriented nature of the jungle definitely helps Amumu cry a little bit less. Because of some of the changes to the jungle, he's now a much safer pick now that the blue side of the jungle is more rewarding on its first clear. He's practically guaranteed to hit level 3 at least, and then from there he can do whatever he wants and find ways to hit level 6, that way he can come online. Amumu deals great damage and provides a ton of crowd control with his ultimate. If you like to initiate fights and find satisfaction in hitting big ultimates that set up wombo combos, you want to look no further than Amumu. If you have an AP champion on your team that deals AoE damage, you'll help them out a ton as Amumu can build Abyssal Mass to increase their damage output as well. You are a great wombo combo machine, so make sure to consider picking him if you have champions on your team like Orianna, Ziggs, or Rumble. And of course, one more time, here are those jungle builds on the screen right now. Let's move on to the mid lane. Alright, I'll admit it. I partially put Ziggs here just so you guys would not forget that he's a champion. He's our first mid lane pick, and you'd be surprised to know that he's been doing quite well. Not great in previous patches, but just fine at slightly above a 50% win rate. So what changed? Well, our analysts predicted that Ziggs would be in a better spot, not in terms of power, but in terms of utility when they heard that Rift Herald could spawn twice in one game. This is kind of an indirect buff to Ziggs because one of the strongest parts of his kit is that he can instantly demolish turrets below a certain HP threshold. The combination of Rift Herald and Ziggs' W practically guarantees at least one turret whenever Shelly charges forward. While there is counterplay to this, it's not something that a single player can accomplish by themselves, so bless solo queue. Basically, Ziggs is the same old Ziggs that we know and love, but now he wins even harder when he is ahead. It's just like flipping a coin, and depending on how it lands, he's either stronger or equally as strong as he was before, meaning overall he's going to be better. His wave clear, high range, and ability to quickly take down turrets does allow him to either stall or accelerate the tempo of the game. Next up in the mid lane, we have Swain. He's tanky, packed with utility, and deals insane amounts of damage. You basically get the whole package when you pick Swain at the cost of having someone who's a little lower ranged as your mid laner. However, this trade-off, honestly, is worth it. While our analysts debated naming him a counterpick for our other series, they decided to place him as an underrated one this patch. In general, Swain is going to be a good answer into Assassins because he naturally will build pretty tanky items as they synergize well with his kit. With how popular they currently are, picking Swain is pretty safe since you are more likely to face against one than you were before. Swain can hard carry teamfights with his tankiness and insane AoE damage, so make sure to pick him if your team comp is lacking utility and someone who can frontline. Some players are running Conqueror on him, but it's kind of hard to say whether this is superior to other options like Electrocute and Phase Rush since he can easily activate them as well. For one more look at those mid lane builds on the screen right now, you can take a look and then we will move on to the bot lane. Our first bot lane pick is Trist, with the following bot lane changes allowing more aggressive picks, and because some of the changes to crit items, she is going to look a lot stronger than before. Especially in lower elo, a lot of players underestimate Tristana's all-in. Her explosive charge allows her to jump twice if she can detonate it manually, meaning she can deal even more damage and also chase her enemies down in long distances. As always, she is a solid late game pick because she scales remarkably well. Right now, the most popular support picks are things like Thresh, Senna, Leona, Nautilus, and Pyke, and in an aggressive bot lane meta like this one, Trist is ready to fight. Although she has a good late game, our analysts want you to know that she's actually a champion more suited for solo queue because of how hard she snowballs. The distance that she can travel with 2 jumps is ridiculously long, meaning she can honestly jump on her opponents off cooldown while ahead. Our second bot lane pick is Lux, and while it may sound weird at first, she acts in a similar way to Senna. Lux can be played as a bot laner who either starts Spell Thieves, or you can go Doran's Ring depending on what she values and how she wants to play the lane. She can concede the farm, donating it to a melee support, or act as part of a double mage bot lane with somebody like Vel'Koz, Brand, Xerath, or Zyra. If you really think about it, Lux's kit is actually kind of made for bot lane, which is also why she was such a good support last season. Her shield can shield both of you guys, she has crowd control that can hit up to 2 targets, and she has pretty high damage. Whether she wants to play more of a supportive role like she did last season, or she wants to be more of a hard carry in build damage, Lux can opt to either choice, and she's going to be relatively safe no matter what, since she can always resort to farming with her E from range. Although she will eventually run out of mana doing so, it's always better than being zoned off of your wave completely, and she can also try using her ultimate to clear waves if necessary, and then reset in base. Check out those bot lane builds one more time as we wrap up the video today with support. First up for supports is Vel'Koz. While there's been a lot of hype for aggressive Aftershock supports, there is one detail that some players forgot about. While the cooldown on Aftershock has been reduced, its overall early game strength has gone down. Typically, melee supports try to kill mage supports in one heavy all-in style trade, and since Aftershock is weaker in this regard now, mage supports are finding a lot more success as they can turn around fights more often than they could before. As long as they can land some poke before the fated duel, it's much easier to win these 2v2 fights. A secondary reason could be that the alcoves do open up more angles for Vel'Koz in his geometry, and that's also a pretty good spot for him to use his ultimate. It seems like some of the longer range options in the bot lane are the ones that get to use the alcoves the most, whereas the shorter range ones honestly either don't care or now get punished because they exist. Vel'Koz's high range and high damage make him a powerful addition to many different team comps. Whether you're teamfighting or sieging, Vel'Koz can heavily influence how both of these things go. Another good reason to pick him is that he does a good job of pressuring his opponents off of Baron and Dragon, as they'll be stuck in narrow spaces while doing them. Thinking along the exact same lines, we're also going to mention Brand here. Pretty much everything that we just mentioned about Vel'Koz does ring true with Brand as well. The differences are in how they deal their damage and, of course, their range. While Brand's range may not be as insane as Vel'Koz's, his ability to turn around Baron and Dragon fights is arguably much higher than Vel'Koz's. Since enemies are trapped in smaller spaces, there's pretty good potential for bounce houses with Brand's ultimate, as well as higher chances of activation of his passive. Brand's burn alongside Liandry's also means that his poke will be a little bit more impactful at the cost of being a little bit more dangerous to get in range of so you can land it. One thing you don't want to take for granted on Brand is how strong Rylai's as well as Morellonomicon is. Liandry's is your priority, don't get me wrong, but these are secondary and tertiary items that are also extremely valuable. The slow on Rylai's can be so valuable during clutch teamfights or when you're trying to chase, while Morello's damage will continue to mitigate healing throughout teamfights. Of course, Brand's biggest strength is damage, and building these items increases utility and allows him to fulfill the role of support. Remember, the best form of crowd control in League of Legends is killing the opponent. And here's a quick recap for all of the builds that we mentioned for support. Anyway, that's going to conclude this episode of Underrated Picks. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see more content like this or a ton of helpful content related to gameplay, check out our YouTube channel, as well as ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with professional players to design the best content to help you improve. Good luck on the Rift, and we hope to see you all next time.